So hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Once again, as always, I am Steve Taylor. I am the lead advisor over here at Merited Wealth. And this is a different version of our podcast. It's under the title of the Thoughts and Growth Mode, which is a little different than our other one. And in this version of our podcast, we try to, whether it's me individually or bring on guests, we try to talk about things and information and educate that you may find helpful in your daily life, whether personally or whether your business, to really give just thoughts and ideas and guidance out there that hopefully you would find of value, for you and for anybody else you may be working with. And so today's, topic, we're doing a little bit different format. There's going to be two, let's call us experts right on this topic, but we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to talk about it kind of from each of our points of view and go through it. But basically, we're going to try to put a little more practical, interesting spin on something that is traditionally seen as very boring, right? Very boring. I don't need it. I don't want to talk about it. And we'll call it estate planning. So before we start, let me introduce my compatriot here, Jose. If you can give us a little introduction about yourself, you and your firm.
Sure, absolutely. Not a problem. How's it going, Stephen? So yes, my name is Jose Selanikio. I work here at the Benayoun Law Firm. We're an estate, tax, and corporate law firm. We do the whole gamut of estate planning for U.S. persons, non-U.S. persons. We do tax planning for people with high net worth, and also corporate law for all of our clients who need help with all their corporate matters. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. It sounds really good. You mentioned it. People don't like talking about it. People think it's like a bad word, estate planning. Maybe we should call it life planning. It's not about estate always. It's about life. We're life planning.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's wonderful. Let's call it. Yeah, let's call it life planning, right? And really let's take this in the time we have here today. I want to kind of walk the listener, the viewer through this process to kind of say, well, at each stages of life where you're at as you're going through this, what part of these legal documents that have traditionally fallen into estate planning do you kind of need? Do you want? And because many people aren't really sure.
Yeah.
So I'll start out real quick and talk about, so you are starting out in life, right? You are you've finished college, you're on your own, you have your first job, whatever it might be. You might think about starting your own business, whatever that might be. But you're alone, right? You're single. You're not alone, but you're single. You're not married, whatever it might be. So, in that situation, what people really need, and they often don't think about, and as we have, further conversation here, you'll see the full circle of this, is, okay, you may not need a will, right? You may not need a will. If you have certain assets, you can name beneficiaries on those accounts of who they might go to and items like that. But and you might not, a trust, which Jose, you'll talk about later. But the real two most important documents you need a power of attorney and a healthcare surrogate, right? Power of attorney, real simply, is talking about who is able to make financial decisions for you if you're not able to, and a healthcare surrogate is the same, but for healthcare decisions.
Right.
And what makes this so important to have is that if for any reason you're unable to make decisions for yourself for a short or long period of time, without those documents, a legal guardianship may need to be put in place for you. Okay. And so that's going to be a constant theme here, that when we're talking to the people out there, Jose, is that we want to avoid a guardianship. We want to keep things as private and everything as possible.
Yeah. So the documents you can draft, you start with the healthcare surrogate, start with the power of attorney. They're going to keep things private, keep things cheap and fast, because those don't have to go through a court process. They don't have to be approved by a judge. They don't take time, and guardianships, for persons or for financial reasons, are very expensive. Period. So yeah, those are beneficial documents, and it's a nice way to start out your estate life planning life with something. You need to start out healthy and then keep moving on as you go through the stages.
And I'll go real quickly, talking about guardianships, that was an area of law I practiced for many years. And unfortunately, what I used to tell people is that a guardianship proceeding is one of the, maybe not, the only, but one of the major lose propositions. Everyone does this. They're expensive. People lose their rights. family, many times will lose, the relationships, when they're fighting on and all the like. It's something you want to avoid. It can be easily avoided. So,
Right.
so now we move on, Jose. Now we found that significant other, right? Whoever it might be, and we decided to go ahead and get married. Now, if someone's at that stage, what are some of the things they should be thinking about that at that stage?
You definitely want to think about your will or potentially your trust, depending on how your life is. Those are the two things. You want to direct where your assets are going to go. You may say, this is all going to go to my spouse, or maybe you say some to my spouse, some to somebody else, children, family, whoever that may be. The goal with the will or potentially the trust, which is a will substitute, is really that you get to direct how your estate works, right? You get to direct that. You get to choose who's your personal representative. You get to choose how these things are distributed. That's up to you. Now, if you don't, you nobody has to, but you fall into the estate, the intestate rules, which are standard. They're fair, but they're not necessarily what everybody wants, especially in non-standard families. I've seen that a bunch. Is where somebody, they have non-standard families. They have a girlfriend, maybe who they've been with forever. They don't inherit an intestate because they're a girlfriend. They're not married. Somebody with kids from another marriage, definitely you have to think about that. Somebody who maybe they don't want to inherit one of their parents, right? They don't have any kids or a spouse, it goes to parents. So in those type of non-standard families, you really need to think about directing where you want your assets to go.
I love that, Jose. I love how you said that, because many people, when they'll come in, or when I'm giving a presentation or I'm talking to a bunch of students, I ask, how many of you have a will? And none of them will raise their hand. And then I said, no, that's wrong. All of you have a will. It's called the laws of intestate. And it's upon you to step in and change that. Let me ask you a question there, Jose, when we're talking about, this is, let's say it's a couple that are already married, right? Because married versus unmarried, like you mentioned, great point, that especially if you're unmarried, you really need the additional planning. But if you're married, is it important or vital that both spouses use the same attorney on this, or go to you to one attorney? Or what are some of the pros and cons of using the same attorney, or if you go through and use different attorneys? Because I know that question does come up.
Right. Yeah. You can go through different attorneys. In some situations, I might encourage it. Let's say that each have their own assets or their own family wealth that they want to inherit their own way. You can do it. If you do, they better be talking to each other, those two attorneys, because that can create significant conflicts in different estate plans. Also, you just need to understand the laws of elective share too. That's very important too. There's laws here especially in Florida, that inherit a spouse. So if you have a spouse and you're married, legally married, you have to know exactly how that inheritance works. We most of the time will be the one attorney for the husband and the wife. We have to give certain disclosures and explain to them, look, we're representing both of you, but technically you may have different interests in the marriage. So for now, you understand that you may have different interests. You're waiving that right. We're telling you, we're at the moment attorneys for both of you. So we have to dance a little dance. But in most cases, we'll be the attorney for husband and wife, because in most cases, they're inheriting the same, and they kind of have the same life plan on how they want to do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As I explained, as those a typical "I love you" situation. You want to take care of your spouse, you want to take care of your children, and those are really simple, and those are really best. And to your point, the vast majority will be one attorney for both couples. A good attorney, if they notice a challenge there, like you said, they might make a different recommendation. But
yes, right, yeah, exactly. It's really a non-standard situation in the vast majority of cases. I don't know if any of our cases that we've had recently that we've been the attorney for husband and wife.
Yeah. So now I'll address. I'll go through. So now you're married, right? And once again, all these situations I'm giving. We'll assume you haven't done your planning, right? Or you're doing your planning anew. Because it's not a bad idea to relook at each one of these major life decisions.
Yes.
So now you have kids, right? Kids come in, and that's now everything's changed it. So what I really like to talk to people about that is that really brings up the need to have a trust. Right, to have a trust to have there for the assets that go for their kids, because the differentiation that I like to say between a will and a trust is a will says who gets your assets, whereas a trust says how they get your assets, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have a will that says how, it means you have a trust within a will. So for all intents and purposes, we'll talk about the trust. So when you have that child, you really need to make the decisions that how they're going to receive that money. who's going to be in charge of it for those kids. And
Yeah.
then really, very importantly, is while the kids are minors, if something happened to either one
Yes.
or both of the spouses, who is named guardian in order to look after those kids. Those are really, really, some of the biggest and fundamental decisions to make. Jose, what are your thoughts? When someone comes in this situation, now they have kids, anything you're adding to this, or your thoughts on some of the things they might be
Sure.
thinking about?
Yeah. So I'm thinking, first of all, yeah, you want to, one of the main benefits of a trust is the avoidance of probate, right? We know that you avoid probate. So it's a private process. It happens technically immediately. It may take a little bit of time, but it doesn't take too much time to process the trust. So you don't have to go through the 6 months, a year, who knows, maybe even a year and a half, 2 years of probate process to get assets or to get access to assets. The trustee, who are the successor trustees, whoever they may be, will get immediate access or more or less immediate access. So that's one of the main benefits. When you have minor children, that's super important. There's no space for a gap of 6 months, a year. It's like you have kids, things have to be taken care of. I think especially when people have kids, is that they'll get life insurance. Very important thing, part of your estate plan, right? You get your life insurance. Now that could be $500,000, $1 million, $5 million policy. Where's that money going, and who's going to take care of it? You want that you could put it in somebody's name, which is okay. If it's a minor child, you have to be careful because you're gonna need a guardian appointed for them. But maybe better is put it in the trust and have the terms of the trust to delineate where it goes, who's going to be the trustee of it. So that's another thing that's super important for the trust with relation to life insurance. And then maybe another thing is that it's not always about, God forbid, death. It's also about just maybe somebody's incapacitated, right? So the trust has a benefit there. If you have assets in the trust, whatever they may be, maybe rental housing, maybe bank accounts, maybe companies that earn income. At least now the trustee, if the person's incapacitated, can still direct where that money goes according to the terms of the trust. So there's a third benefit. And the benefits could go on and on about trust, but they're definitely one of the most important tools in estate planning for sure.
Yeah, what I like to explain, how I explain a trust to people that the concept's new to them. I say, think of it as your personal corporation, right? This is
Right.
something where you're going to put all your
Yeah.
assets into, and it's going to live beyond you, right? And it's going
Right.
to control what happens to your assets, and it's a great thing to have in place. And
I
then
think that's the word. It's
Yep.
personal corporation. It's a corporation almost, but it's personal. It's not like a corporate entity. It's a personal corporation.
Yeah, and your life plan, it's a huge part of it. And then also, without going to, on my side, on the financial planning side, when some people get life insurance, just one caveat here: be careful when you have life insurance and then you do your estate planning afterwards, and you don't update your beneficiaries on your life insurance. Like Jose mentioned before, that can really lead to unintended consequences. So there really is a lot of value to continue to review and coordinate everything that you have in place as your wealth, as your family, as everything grows. So
Yeah.
so now you've been working for a number of years. You're getting older, like me. Your kids are growing up. My oldest just started college. They're becoming adults and stuff like that, and they're getting that page, and and you have some assets and stuff like that, and you want to start continue to look at planning there. One of the biggest things we do for all clients, and this is common, many people, is that when your minor child becomes 18 years old, understand, parent, you are no longer able to make decisions for them. They are adults. They got to write in their documents. They got to do their own power of attorney. They got to do their own healthcare surrogate to kind of allow you to continue to make decisions for them. But Jose, so you're growing your wealth some more, right? You're guarding your kids are getting older. Maybe you have a business, let's say, that you're running, and there's got more value in your business there. So when you're looking to either do for the first time or update your estate planning at this later stages of life, what are some things that they might want to be thinking about there regarding their business, regarding succession, the future?
Exactly. I'm thinking more legacy estate planning, like where do you want your legacy to go? And also business planning. You may have a business and, if let's say something happens to the person, who's going to run that business? You want to know, and technically powers of attorney can give that power to somebody. Who are you giving that power to? And that's maybe a little bit of an intersection between corporate law and estate planning. is, okay, well, what do the corporate documents say, right? And, just because you have a power of attorney that says X, how does that work out with the corporation? So it's another important thing to think about. And then you want to think more about your legacy. You may make alternative trusts. Maybe you'll make, I don't know, you might make alternative trusts. You might make qualified personal residence trusts, depending on your taxable estate too. It's another whole other issue about taxable estates. Irrevocable life insurance trusts will be another thing that you might engage in at that point. But I think you want to alternate your thinking a little bit more into legacy and more organizational, that things can run according to the documents. If for whatever reason you can't run them yourself.
Absolutely. So, like, that's a great point. You might have to have additional, documents. It's tough. We don't want to overcomplicate things, but you don't want to undercomplicate things, right? So that's that fine line that we're always walking. And inside your business, a lot of the conversations that you should be having, the thoughts you should be having, okay, maybe I'm younger, I'm healthy now, whatever it might be. But in case of the unexpected, or in 5, 10, 15 years from now, what's going to happen? Who's going to come in after me? Is my business set up so that if something happened to me, do other people have authorizations to take actions to move it forward and to put everything in there? So these are the things that your estate plan, your life plan, right? Can we call it now? Maybe it becomes your life and business plan, right? Because now you have these two aspects to it, and your sphere and your bubble is addressing more things, and you just got to make sure you have all the proper people and all the proper things in place to ensure, hopefully it goes as smooth as possible.
Yeah. And so I think this might be, well, maybe even the next stage it might come in. But I'm remembering a case where we had a very older gentleman who had some investment properties in LLCs. And the thing is, we wanted to reorganize his estate plan. He had a wife who didn't have children with. He had children from another spouse. So we wanted to reorganize. The thing is, he was a little bit old, so we had some trouble with, what is this capacity? Are we going to go through the guardianship route? Are we not? So we started looking, and we luckily found some powers of attorneys that were very old that named the kids and allowed the kids to do certain actions with the estate that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to do. Only because luckily they did estate planning, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 years before. Very lucky that we found those type of documents. And I think that's kind of an opportunity to see older estate planning or things that happened much before affecting a current situation that was, sticky, because he didn't have estate planning at that time either. Had he done some estate planning here, it would have been great, but he didn't. So we are lucky that we found something important.
That's a great point, Jose. And I cannot stress this more with people or anybody that are putting their documents together, is that once you do this and you go through and you name these people, first and foremost, before you name them, reach out to them. Find out that whether they're willing to serve in that role or not. You may be very, very surprised. I remember when we were doing the planning, my wife and I, as our kids were getting older, and they had a good relationship with our grandparents, but our grandparents said, no, listen, Steve, we're older. We can't do this again, right? Name the siblings or name, right? To have those conversations, to have those there. And don't keep it a secret, right? And many people will say, well, I don't want them to know, or they might be able to do this or that. Listen, there's plenty of checks and balances that are in place. But when things come as a surprise, that's when things actually do not go as planned. I remember, Jose, to your point, one time we were sitting down with a wife that the husband had done all the estate planning, and he had not involved her at all. He had not talked to her. She had not asked her opinion and everything. And it was good planning. It was smart planning. But she said, and she sat down, I'll never forget this day. She says, listen, he never spoke to me about any of this. I didn't want anything that he put in place. So she unraveled it all. She didn't care that it was going to cost money or taxes and whatever it might be. So really, you got to keep everybody, in communication of what you're doing and everything there.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the alternative. Sometimes they don't do estate planning, and God forbid, a husband, or it could be even a wife, whoever it is, passes away, and they leave it all to the other spouse to do, years down the line. That's stressful too. Trust me. I've had a couple of cases where, God forbid, a husband passes away relatively young, and then his wife comes into my office and she's like, now I have to do this all without him. It's the best is to do it together and early, and then continue, like you said, over the course of the years.
So now we've gotten older. Our kids are older. Now we're in that later stage. This is an area I dealt with a lot. I was an elder law attorney in my previous life, and they start you start getting older, and you realize, hey, I guess I'm not going to live forever. I thought I was going to, right? I was invincible and everything that it might be. And you start going through that, and then your little children now are starting to become really adults and really more involved in your life. And really at this point, it's really important to start, like I said, to really start bringing your next generation, everybody into this planning, to know what they're doing, to know the documents that you've had in place. Because unfortunately, there is issues as you age, and if you do, suffer from any, various forms of whether, dementia comes in all shapes and forms, you get you can unknowingly to yourself get a little secretive and a little, concerned, and you could go, and I've seen it many times where they go in and change the whole entire plan. Really not because they wanted to, it's just because at that stage that they were in. And let's not take it to the worst scenario. You're just getting older. But as you're getting older and you're setting up this planning, it's really vital that you bring the next generation in there, make sure that they're there, make sure everything, I can't reiterate how important it is to make sure everything is titled as you're going through these different stages. And it's worthwhile to review it together. And a real good way, is whether your power of attorney or whether your trusteeship. If you're concerned about naming just one person, then name multiple people. Right? Yep. Name multiple 100%. People that you trust, and really explain to them and go out of your way to talk to them that you've named them and why you've named them that way. Because the worst thing is not to name them, and then all of a sudden you've passed away, and here they are. Whether in case of children, one of them is not named, and there is so much hurt, and there is so much pain from that, and it really brings up it brings up things from when you were children, right? And that really leads to when you hear all those terrible estate litigation matters and all that stuff. That's really where a lot of that stems from, and that's brought up. But Jose, so this last stage we're going through, and they have all this stuff together. What are maybe some other thoughts or anything you might want to add to as when we're in the last, let's call it quarter, whether a sports analogy or not, of your life, and you're looking to put this together? What do you think are some of the more important things?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you're exactly right about the next generation or whatever it is. You want to be as clear as you can on that. And something that we like to do, and Will's to touch on one of your points you mentioned, is we'll mention why this child either is not getting some sort of asset or is not named, and we'll say why. And it generally starts with, I have a lot of love and affection for this child, but for this and this reason, this has to happen. And that, I think, gives it a little opportunity for for whoever it is to make it work. The other thing to think about is that who you're going to name is going to be very important. Spread it around, like you said, is a good option, and maybe even leave some sort of letter. We've done it before, letter of wishes. We like doing that. It's not a legal document, but it's a letter of wishes that kind of explains a little bit, what the parents, what the people were thinking when they left the
or
estate.
A video, like we're doing. Everything's video nowadays, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A video, great. I love it. It's great. Make it part of your estate plan so it's not so cut and dry. Explain to people early, especially when you're in that stage. You have to explain why and how, and to the people who are named in there. Do you want to leave to a charity? Explain why. Whatever the case may be, you want to explain that to the children early. Be like, look, I'm leaving to the charity. And say, why are they leaving charity? God forbid, kids might say, I want it, I need it. So then you can have that conversation early, right? It's not a very fun conversation after. Is how much is going to charity? Wow, that's not a fun conversation.
Well, it's a testator's wish, right? I want to really point out there to that point is that, listen, whoever you are, and these are your documents, these are your assets. You need to do whatever you want with them. If you want to have the majority of your kids, fine. If I know the Gates family, they said, we don't believe in inheritance, right? We're going to give it all away. We want people to be self-sufficient in our family and stuff like that. So it's really whatever that is that you wish to put there. And that's really important. And to your other point, I want to just follow up on that issue of that. If you do disinherit someone, that you mention it. You say, even though I love them, I'm specifically disinheriting them. Because if you aren't specific on that, it could be very problematic for later days in litigation, right? Because
exactly what you're saying.
They can make the argument, oh, he just forgot, or they didn't mean
undue influence. They'll say undue influence, that this kid who's living next to me, who's helping me all the time, he influenced the father or the mother, whoever it is, to change the will to cut out kid. It's like, no, that kid is doing great in California. This kid who's helping me out in Florida, he needs some help. Whatever the situation may be.
You got it. You can't over communicate. I mean, honestly, the lawyer or whoever you might go to might put a lot of legalese, but a really great recommendation, and tell them, hey, please add a little narrative in there, like you just said. This is why I'm doing it. Just be very specific in what you're doing to make it, smoother.
Yeah.
And the more specific you are, the better chance it is of what you are intending and what you're putting in there to
Right.
be accomplished.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
Jose, I think this has been a great conversation. I hope
Yeah.
those of you out there listening to this and the various formats, find this helpful.
Yeah.
I will put Jose's information. I'll put it, on YouTube. I'll put it on Anchor out there. So if you want to ever reach out to him or ask more questions, that you will have that.
Sure.
But please let me know. Let us know if you found this helpful.
Right.
If you think you'd like more content like this, please
Yeah.
reach out to me. I have an email called podcast@Merited Wealth for any other topics or anything else
Sure.
that you might want to include, and that would be really helpful. Just let us know. So Jose, I really appreciate your time
Absolutely.
here. I don't
Yeah,
know
it
if
was
there's
great.
anything in closing, anything you might want to add or anything to those.
Honestly, the only thing to add is that this is the tip of the iceberg. We barely even started, right, on a lot of these subjects. We barely even touched on them. There's a lot of depth into each one of these subjects. This is a good start. It's a good overview, maybe very, very high level, but there's depth in estate planning and life planning in general. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. And I think hopefully that we've shown is that as we've walked through the stages of life, the conversations and the complication have grown.
Sure.
And that's
Yes.
typically, that's just how it works, right? You get older, you get kids, you get assets, or everything like that. So
Yeah.
depending on what stage you're at, you always need some sort of life planning, estate planning. But really, as you get older, it does require you to think about it more and talk about it more, and get those, trusted, the family involved, and find some advisors that you can trust to help navigate through this.
Absolutely.
All right.
Very good. Thanks,
Jose,
Stephen.
thanks a lot for your time,
Oh,
buddy.
thank you. Yeah, it was awesome. Very good.